Today's daf we're going to be learning is Chullin daf Tzadi Gimel. It's the daf for Shabbat. We're going to get started from the very bottom of Tzadi Bet Amud Bet at the bottom. We were talking about Loven Kuliah after going in depth into the statement of Rav Sheshet. We then added that Loven Kuliah is a machlok between Rabbi and Rabbi Chia, one forbade, one permitted, and therefore there was this two groups of rabbis, Rabbi and Rabbi Yochanan, who really scraped out all of the fat, and Rabbi Asi who didn't. And comes Abai and he says, Amar Abai, Kavatei Rabbi Asi Mistabra. Seems that Rabbi Asi is right that you don't have to scoop out all of the fat there. To Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, we're going to see this string of Rabbi Yehuda quoting Rabbi Abba quoting Rabbi Yehuda quoting Shmuel today a number of times, who said, Chelev Shabasar Chofeo Tomutal. Okay, we're going to some other topic right now. It's kind of similar, but we're talking about other chelev, not in the kidneys, but the chelev on the ksalim. Okay, what are the ksalim? So first of all, where do they appear? So in the Torah, in Vayikra chapter 3, verse 4, it tells you all the different parts that need to be burned on the altar. The klayot, the kidneys, the chelev, which is on them, and asher ala ksalim, and also on the ksalim, which are these flanks of meat that are toward the back of the animal, near the back thigh bone and toward the tailbone, and the yoteret ala kaved, okay, etc. So basically, we have the chelev that's on them, on the kidneys, and on the ksalim. So now we're going to make a comparison. So it says there, the chelev that the meat covers it, basically the fat that's underneath the meat there is permitted. Alma sha'al ksalim amar Rachmana v'lo shebetoch ksalim. Now, if you notice in the pasuk it said that's on the ksalim, not that the ksalim are on it. So therefore, the chelev that's forbidden is chelev that's on top of the ksalim, and that's what we see from the statement of Shmuel that was quoted by Rabbi Yehuda, quoted by Rabbi Abba. And therefore, achinami sha'al klayot, because the pasuk also said on the klayot, on the kidneys, amar Rachmana v'lo shebetoch klayot. So also in the kidneys, this fat that's inside is not a problem because the meat covers it. That's not fat that's problematic. Okay, and that's what we learn from the chelev on the ksalim. From there, we learn to the chelev on the klayot. Gufa. Now we're going to go in depth into the statement that we just said. So Amar Rabbi Amma, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, chelev shabasar chofeu tomutal. So the chelev, right, that the meat is covering, it's kind of inside the meat, is permitted. Is that really true? V'ha'amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav, Amar Shmuel. Didn't that same person say the following? Hai tarba detute matne asir. The fat that's underneath the motnaim, okay, underneath the hip bone, is permitted. Is forbidden. Okay, so Amar Abaye. So now what do you see? It's meat that's under the hip bone. So wouldn't that be a problem? To which they say, I just want to check the translation for a second. Yeah, they say the motnaim is the loins, okay? So I guess it's the loins. Anyway, I'm not sure if I translated it accurately, but either which way, here we're talking about meat that's under the loins that is forbidden. And before we said it was permitted. So Amar Abaye, behema b'chayeh peruke mefarka. Okay, basically we're going to say that when the animal is alive. Now, right now we found this fat underneath, and that's right. It's after the slaughter, when the animal's dead. And it's this fat that's underneath the loins. But the animal during its lifetime, things move around, and when it moves, the bones move, and the parts of the body move, and you're going to end up. This fat is not always underneath the meat, and that's why it's going to be forbidden, because sometimes it's not. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Analav Tabachana. I'm not. This is a great line. I'm not a butcher, right? I'm not a slaughterer. V'lav bar Tabachana, and I'm not the son of. Like I don't presume to know so much about this from what actually happens. But nihirna, but I was taught to hachi havu amri beit midrash, that this is what they said in the beit midrash. In other words, my knowledge of this comes from the beit midrash. Behema b'chaya peruke mefalka. Okay, when the animal walks, again, things move, and the motnaim, which again, they're the loins. You could also maybe call them the hips, right? They move around, and the fat at some points moves upward, and that's why that fat is going to be forbidden. Okay, but that doesn't contradict what we said before about the chelev in this part where it's called the ksalim, that's underneath is going to be permitted. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, the same person now talks about other chelev. Chelev sha'al hemses ubeit hakosot asulim va'anush karet. The chelev on top of the hemses and the beit hakosot, those two different parts of the stomach, right? Remember, there's 4 stomachs. These are 2 of them. Is forbidden, and you get karet for it. V'zeu chelev she'ala kerev, another chelev that's mentioned in the Torah, again, the one that gets burned on the altar, which is also the one that's forbidden in regular animals. That's called the chelev on the chelev on the kerev of the innards, right? So the innards refer to these two stomachs, the hemses and the beta kosot. Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So now Rabbi Abba in the name of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel says another statement. Hai tarba de klivusta asur va'anush karet. Okay, the fat of the klibusta, which Rashi says is basically this small bone that's attached to the tail near the end there, and it also seems to be referring to the chelev of the ksalim. That's what we're going to see right now. It's asur va'anush karet v'zeu chelev she'ala ksalim. Okay, so again, it's in the back of the animal somewhere near the pelvic bone and the tail. V'amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, chutin shebayad asurin. Okay, the strings of veins that are in the arm are forbidden. So Amar Rav Safra, now we're going to talk about this in a minute. What's the problem? Amar Rav Safra, Moshe, he calls him Moshe, like Talmid Chacham, he's basically a term of respect, but he says, Mi amar Rachmana lo techa bisrit, does the Torah say don't eat meat? In other words, these veins are just part of the meat. Who says they're forbidden to eat? Amar le, okay, it says Amar Rava, it should be Amar le, the notes correct it. So he says back to him, right, Rabbi Abba says, Moshe, he calls him back, Moshe, mi amar Rachmana echol dama, who said you can eat blood? And this is going to bring us into a whole conversation about not only the chelev that's forbidden, but also the blood. Now, the issue is that the veins carry blood, and what basically he responds back is chatri umalche. You have to cut them and salt them. And that's going to take the blood out. Once that draws out the blood, afilu likdera nami shapir dam. You can even put it in a pot and cook it up with water, right? With other stuff, even though theoretically there's still blood in there, the blood's going to stay in there as opposed to roasting, where if you roast something, right, it gets the blood out. But basically, you have two options, even though the Gemara doesn't talk about this. You can either salt it and roast it, right, like a barbecue, and that takes out the blood without cutting it up. Or if you want to cook it in a pot, you can salt it, and first cut it, then salt it, and that's going to take out all the blood, or enough blood that, right, all the blood is pulled out, and then you're allowed to put it in a pot and cook it up. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Reish, so now we drop Rabbi Abba here. All the other statements are Rabbi Abba, the name of Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Shmuel. This is just Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Said, Reish Maya Ba'am Tabai Greira. Okay, the top of the small intestine, that's the me'ayim, an ama's worth, okay, the length of a cubit needs to be peeled off. You need to take off all the fat there. V'zeu chelev she'ala dakim. Okay, so we had the chelev on the ksalim, we have the chelev on the klayot, we have the chelev on the krav, and the kerev, and now we have the chelev on the dakim. Okay, these are all the forbidden fats. V'amar Rav Yehuda, chutin sheba'oketz asurim. Okay, he says the veins that are in the oketz, there's a debate whether this is the tailbone or it's also something like nerves that are near the pelvis, are forbidden. Chamsha chute itbe bekafla. Okay, there's 5 of these veins in the kafla. The kafla is the ksalim. Tlata miyamina utarte mismola. Okay, 3 on the right and 2 on the left. Tlata mipatle the tray. The 3 on the right split up each one into 2 smaller ones. 2 branch out of the 3. And trey mefasle the tlata, and the 2 branch into 3. Okay, branch out into 3. So why are they telling you this? Right? Basically, you're going to have 6 on this side and 6 on that side because the 2 branch out into 3 and the 3 branch out into 2. Well, nafkamina di ishalef lehu adechamime mishtalfe. Well, if you pull them out right away, these veins, right when the animal's still warm, basically right after the slaughter, it's very easy to pull them out, and you can pull them out completely, and you don't really need to know the numbers, how many there are. Below, but if you didn't, then batrayu. You're going to have to actually pull them out. You're going to have to pull them out afterwards. You're going to have to basically work hard to find them. Once the animal kind of cools down, so to speak, okay, and is no longer warm and fresh from the slaughter, then it's going to really be more difficult, and you're going to have to basically go in there and pull them out, and you're going to need to be able to count them to find them. So that's why we give a number to it. Amar Abaye v'itema Rav Yehuda. So now we still have Rav Yehuda, but it's not clear whether Rav Yehuda said it or Abaye said it. Chamsha chute havu. There's 5 veins. Tlata mishum tarbu u'trei mishum dam. In other words, there's 5 that are forbidden. 3 because we're talking about these 5 that we just were mentioning that come out of the tailbone. 3 are problematic because of chelev, and 2 are problematic because of blood. Detachle udekafle udechuliata. Okay, so the veins that are in the spleen and the flanks, right, the back part, the tailbone area, or between the pelvis and between the pelvis and the tailbone area, and the kuliata and the kidneys, mishum tarba, is because of chelev. Diyada udaloa, but the ones, actually, I made a mistake. It's not the 5 that we were just talking about. There's a different 5 veins they're talking about. And 2, one in the arm and one in the jawbone, are mishum dama. Okay, these are, or in the cheekbone, are because of blood. Okay, so now we're going to say these are problematic. 3 on the account of chelev, 2 on the account of blood. Lamai nafkamina, why do you need to know if they're all forbidden? Well, we already learned this. Hani de mishum dama, well, the ones because of blood, imachatechlu, if you cut them, umalachlu, and salt them, shapir dami, well, then you can eat them. But hanach le'lu takanta, but the other ones, there's no way to fix them. Amar Rav Kahana v'itema Rav Yehuda, chamsha karme havu. There's 5 klums. Okay, this again. Either Rav Kahana said it or Rav Yehuda said it. So we're still maybe in Rav Yehuda's statements. There's 5 membranes that are problematic. Tlata mishum tarba, 3 are a problem because of forbidden fats. Utre mishum dama, and 2 because of blood. The same 3 we're going to have. Detachlu, dekafle, dekuliata. The spleen, that back area, the ksalim that we've been calling them, and the kidneys, mishum tarba, based on our problem because of fat. Tebee, the testicles, udumokra, and the brain is mishum dama. Okay, this is again, the membranes on these items have either fat or a lot of blood in them. It makes sense that the brain and the testicles have a lot of blood. Rav Yehuda bar Oshaya have a kakalifle tafle de Levi bered Rav Huna bar Chia. So Rav Yehuda bar Oshaya was peeling off the membrane on the spleen of Levi's, okay, who was the son, Levi was the son of Rav Huna bar Chia. It's important to know in a minute because his father's going to pipe into the conversation. Havakagaim le mi'ilai. So now Rav Yehuda bar Oshaya was cutting off the top part of the membrane. Amar le chut beitfei. So Levi said to him, cut down further down because you have to get all the fat from the membrane. Amar avua ata avua eshtache. So the father comes and sees this Rav Chia bar Abba. Rav Huna bar Chia sees what Levi told him to do. Amar le hacha amar avua dimach mishum dera. Says this is what your father's, the father of your mother, meaning your grandfather, your maternal grandfather, said in the name of Rav Umanu. Who is this? Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. He was, now you learn, he was the grandfather, right? His son-in-law was Huna bar Chia, and his grandson was Levi. And he said, Lo asra Torah ela she'al hadav bilvad. The Torah only forbade the membrane, the part of the membrane that's on the upper part of the spleen. Okay, you don't need to get to the lower part. To which they say, Ini, is that really true? V'ha'amar Rav Hamnuna, didn't Rav Hamnuna say Tana? The Braita says, Krum sha'alat chol asul ve'en chayavim elav. Okay, that he says the krum, the membrane, this is a Braita, on the tchol, on the spleen, is forbidden, but you're not liable for it. Meaning, it's a code name for forbidden by rabbinic law. So hechidami. Now, this didn't prove anything yet. It just said the membrane on the spleen. But how do we know which part they're referring to? Well, if we're talking about the part that's on the top of it, it can't be that you're not liable. That's for sure forbidden by Torah law, the top part. That's chelev. So, ela de kule, it must be talking about the whole thing, and then it's saying that the whole thing is problematic by rabbinic law. Basically, Levi says, I have this Braita that basically, from what Rav Hamnuna said, it seems very clear. This Braita quoted seems to indicate that the toll is the membrane around the whole thing is a problem, and that's why I asked him to remove it. So, what does the father answer? Amarle, itanya tanya. If you have a Braita, then I guess you have a Braita, and then I guess you're right. I have nothing I can say about that. Okay, so basically the father admits defeat, and Levi was right. Gufa. Now we're going to go back to the statement of Rav Hamnuna, this Braita quoted. But it's going to be longer than what we thought before. This is exactly what we did yesterday with Rav Sheshet. We quoted this line that he said, and then we said, oh, by the way, we're going to quote more than what he said that we quoted before. You know, he actually said more than that. Same thing here. Amar Rav Hamnuna. So Rav Hamnuna said, Tana, kum sha'alat chol asul ve'en chayavin alav, the membrane on the spleen is forbidden, but only by rabbinic law. You're not going to get punished for it. Krum sha'al gabe kuliya, same thing with the membrane on the kidney, is asul ve'en chayavin alav, but you won't be liable for it. So it's forbidden, but by rabbinic law. Vahatanya, doesn't it say in a braita, chayavin alav? But wait, doesn't say in a braita that both of these you're actually liable for. So, tcholo kasha, the spleen on the spleen is not a problem. Ha kineged hadad, ha shalo kineged hadad. Again, one is the top part and one is even the bottom part. So again, top part, you're going to be liable by Torah law, bottom part only by rabbinic law. Kuliya nami lo kasha habila, habitata. Again, with the kilia, it's not a problem. One is the upper membrane, one is the lower membrane. Now we're going to get into this machloket about something else. We're not talking about what we're going to see. We're going to talk about the testicles. Be'e chashilata. We're going to talk about crushed testicles. Okay, there's a completely different situation. We have crushed testicles that are still attached. They're still in the scrotum, and they're still somewhat attached, but not exactly attached. Okay, they're crushed, so they're not really functional. And we're going to see, the question is, now here we have this animal with crushed testicles, but they're still in the scrotum. So the question is, how do we rule? And we're going to see the two issues right now, the two sides. Rav Ami v'Rav Asi, chad asar v'chad shari, one forbade, one permitted. Manda asar, the one who forbade, midelo kabaryan, says, listen, they're never going to heal because they're already crushed. Hane ever min minu. This is like something that's dead, that's attached to a live animal. Problem, can't eat that. Manda shari, the one who permits, midelo kamasrachan, because they're not going to rot, hani chiyuta ipahu, they still have life in them, in which case they're not called ever min and they're actually permitted to eat. Okay, we're going to see later, this became a big debate, custom between the ones living in Israel. The rabbis in Israel permitted this, and the rabbis living in Babylonia forbade eating these testicles. V'idach havadai de lo kamisrachan. Okay, now the one who says, right, the one who says it's ever minachai, so how does he explain why they're not rotting then? So, right, because he basically says they're dead, right? It's like it's detached. He says, oh, the reason why they're not rotting, even though they're dead, is because they have the scrotum protecting them. So there's no air that gets onto them, and that's why they're not rotting. It's not because there's actually life in them. The idach, and the other opinion says, hadalo barian, the fact that they're not going to ever get better, that's just chishuta udenakilu. That's just, it's a weakness in the animal. It's a problem. They'll never get better, but it doesn't mean the animal's going to die. Okay, so now Amarle Rabbi Yochanan, the Rav Shemin bar Abba. Hane be chashilata sharyan va'at lo techol. Now I just told you this before. That in Israel they permitted this. So Rabbi Yochanan, who's in Israel, says to Rav Shemin bar Abba, who came from Babylonia, you can't eat them though. Mishum al titosh torat imecha. You can't leave aside the custom of your family. Since you came from Babylonia, you have to keep by the Babylonian custom, and you can't eat them. Amar Mar Be Rav. Hane Bei de Gadya. Okay, so now Mar Bar Rav Ashi says, what about the testicles of a gedi? Okay, this is of a baby goat. Ad taltin yom and shari and below klipa. The first 30 days it's permitted without peeling off the membrane around them. Mikam va'elach, but after that, okay, so they're permitted without peeling out around the layer, because what's the idea? When they're young, they don't have the ability to reproduce. So there's not a lot of blood flowing there. But after 30 days, azran asurin v'lo azran sharyan. If they already have semen in them, then it's already a problem. If they don't, then they're permitted. Mina yadin, and how are you going to know this? If it has red streaks in it, it's forbidden, because you know then that it already has semen in it. If they don't have the red strands in them, sharyan, it's going to be permitted. And now we move on, although we're going to be a little connected to this. And it's again, but the idea here is that the testicles, the first one was talking about the crushed testicles that are still in the scrotum, but then we moved on to talk about testicles in general, have a lot of blood, and because of that, you have to be concerned for the blood in them. So then the question is, how do you, right, at what stage is it going to be a problem? Now, unse be umizrake. Okay, this is raw meat that we're going to see had an animal that had a wound in it with a lot of blood in there. or be'e, testicles, like we discussed, and mizrake, which is the vein in the neck, which has a lot of blood in it as well. Pligi bar Rav Acha v'Ravina. There's a machloket Rav Acha and Ravina. Now, before we get to understand the machloket, they tell us a little background. Bechol Torah kula, and all of the issues of Torah law, or any argument that they had, Ravina lekula v'Rav Acha lechumra. Okay, on all issues, Ravina always is more lenient, and Rav Acha is more stringent. And Hilchata ke Ravina lekula. And interestingly, we paskin like the lenient opinion of Ravina. Levar mehanitzlat, other than the following three. De Rav Acha lekula, the Ravina lechumra. And the issue of these three that we just discussed, the tebei mizrake, which we didn't really discuss yet, but we just mentioned. Rav Acha is the one who's lenient, Ravina is the one who's stringent, and we actually Hilchata ke Rav Acha lekula. In this case, we paskin like Rav Acha, and we're lenient. Umsa da asmik. Now, what's the case? Umsa da asmik. If you have umsa, this raw meat, which is asmik, it has a lot of blood in it because of a wound. You can cut it, salt it, and you can even put it in a pot like we saw before. This is according to everybody. Tal yenami b'shipuda, if you roast it on a forgot the word, on a spit, daiv dama, the blood's going to come out of it. Agomre, but what if you put it on coals? That's the issue that we have a machloket. Pligi bar Rav Acha v'Ravina, Chad amar mashav she'ive. One said, which must be Rav Acha, who's more lenient, says it pulls out the blood, and therefore it's okay. V'chad amar mitzmat samitle. And the other one says, Ravina says it shrinks and shrivels, and the blood stays inside. And therefore, if you put it on coals, it's actually forbidden because we're worried there's a lot of blood in there. V'chein bei, v'chein mizrakein. The same thing for the eggs and not the eggs, sorry. Same thing for the testicles, the beitzim, and the same thing for the mizrake, for the vein in the neck. Reisha bekivsha. Okay. What if you have a head, okay, the head of the animal that you now put in, okay, they would put things on like hot coals or hot ashes, like a remetz it's called. And they would do this. Okay, so now second. Right, they did this for the purposes of, one second, I forgot there was some reason they would do this. Right, they would do this to get rid of the hairs. Okay, this is a way to take off the hairs very easily. So they would put the head in this fire, okay, like in kind of like a ashes kind of fire. Okay, now, what would happen to the blood here? Would this be worse for the blood, better for the blood? Okay, would it get the blood out of the head? If you put kind of on those hot, I just want to see how they translate it. On the, let's see, on the coals. Okay, it's a kind of coals here. Coals drawn out. Yeah. Move the hair from the head. It's hot ashes. Yeah, they say hot ashes. It's not really coals. It's hot ashes. So if you put the head straight down on the hot ashes, then it's going to take out the blood from there. Okay. So, just finding my place. Yeah. Okay. So if you do the reisha bekivsha, if you put it down with the head down on the ashes, daiv dama ushari, it will draw out the blood and it's permitted. At stadium, but if you put the head on its side, mikpakape, it's going to congeal the blood and it's going to stay inside and it's a problem. What about otve anachire? What if you put it on the nostrils? Now there's holes, so you can put the nostrils face down. Dats be'midi shari. If you put something in to keep the holes open, it's permitted, the blood will come out through the holes in the nostrils. Below, but if not, asir. If you don't put something in, the concern is the holes will shrivel up, kind of close up. Some people say, no, actually through the nostrils and through putting the neck face down, right, then the blood will come out. At studying, if you put it on its side, if you poke it with something, so there's a hole there so the blood can come out of there, shari, it'll be permitted. Low, and if not, asir. So there were two versions of what happens with the head that you put on the ashes. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Shnei gidim heim. Okay, we're done with, we can even summarize this part of the daf at this point. We basically defined what all the different parts of the chelev are. Okay, and we talked about the chelev on the ksalim and on the dakim and on the kerev and on the klayot. we talked about, right? We all got to this because we started with the chaylev on the klayot, and then we talked about the meat, right? That when the meat is on top of the, right, is only the fat that's on top of the limb or the part of the body, but not what's underneath. Okay, we proved that. And then we got to the issue of where there's blood also, and all these different chutim, right? The veins that are going through the body, even though they're actually food or they're considered food, they still have an issue of blood. And then we basically talked about this differentiation between the chaylev and the blood. From there, we moved to the different membranes that have a lot of blood in them. We talked about all sorts of issues. Testicles have a lot of blood in them. On the side, we got into the crushed testicles. And then we got to the machloket, Ravina and Rav Acha, exactly in which case they argued about, right, about getting out the blood in these situations. What gets out the blood, what doesn't get out the blood, right? And what if you put something on coals, does it get out the blood? Does it actually cause the blood to get stuck inside? And we ended with this reisha b'kivsha, this head that they would put on hot ashes. Would that get out the blood or not, right? Depending on which way you put the head. Would the blood come out or wouldn't it? And again, there were two different versions. Now we're getting back to Gid Nashim. Okay, so Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Shnei Gidim Hem. There's two different kinds of Gidim, which we talked about before. Hapnimi Samuch Le'etzem Asur V'chayavin Alav. The inner one is close to the bone. It's forbidden, and you're liable for it by Torah law. That's the Gid Nasheh. Chitzon Samuch Le'basar Asur Ve'en Chayavin Alav. But the outer one is next to the flesh, and that one you can't eat, but it's not forbidden by Torah law, only by rabbinic law. Now, okay, we got that the pnimi is Torah law, the chitzon is rabbinic law, but now they're going to focus on the way they defined it. Which is the pnimi? It's close to the bone. Which is the chitzoni? The outer one is close to the meat. But Hatanya, doesn't it say pnimi samuch lebasal? The inner one is actually close to the meat, not to the flesh, not to the bone. So how did Rav Yehuda say in the name of Shmuel it's close to the bone when this Tanaitic source says it's close to the meat? Amrav Acha, Amrav Kahana. Iklude miklid. Well, it's close to the bone, but then it goes into the flesh and fits into the flesh. Aklide is like from a key. It's the word for a key. It goes in like it fits in like a key to a lock. So it goes right into the meat. Okay, so the flesh, even though it kind of starts next to the bone, but then it goes all the way down into the flesh. But even by the chitzon, it says the exact opposite. The chitzon, the outer one, is near the bone. Amar Rav Yehuda hecha depare tabachin. It's near the bone in this place. The butcher sliced the nerve there. It's right next to the bone, and that's why they call it next to the bone. But it's also next to the meat, okay, next to the flesh. Itmar. Okay, now we get into some talk about the tabachim and the butchers. So the first thing we do is what happens when you have a tabach shenimtzah chelev al chachav. Okay, that they found that he sold meat with chelev in it. What do? Rav Yehuda Amar b'kisora. We penalize him already at the size of, if he didn't take off the fat, forbidden fats, the size of a barley. Rabbi Yochanan Amar b'kizayit. Rabbi Yochanan says it has to be an olive bulk. But Amar Rav Papa v'lo pliga. Rav Papa loves to do this. He loves to be harmonized. He says, no, there's no machloket. Kan lahalkoto, kan laobro. The kizayit is for the person to get lashes, but the kisora is to remove him from his position. Okay, we can remove him from his position by even just he sold a barley's worth. Okay, that's how serious we take it because he's basically causing people to sin. So at a size of a barley, we already remove him from his job. Amar Marzutra, and there's actually a debate whether he disagrees with Rav Papa or is adding to Rav Papa, but he says kiseora b'makom echad, kizayit afilu b'shnayim u'shlosha makomot. A seorah is only in one place. In other words, if you have a seorah in one place, that's a problem. But a kizayit, you can create a problem even if it's b'shnayim shlosha makomot. Okay, some people say it means a seorah won't even be a problem if it's each piece is not even a seorah, but they can join up to add to an olive bulk even if they don't even have a seorah. So the seorah issue is only going to be if it's all in one place. But the kizayit issue could be even if you join them all together. The halacha is exactly as Rav Papa said. To get lashes, you need a kazayit that you sold, and to lose your job, though, only a seorah, which sounds like actually be much worse to lose your job. The commentaries say till you take it upon yourself that you're never going to do this again, and maybe there's some way to get your job back. Now, if you remember, the Mishnah ended with tabachim are not ne'emanim. Okay, let's just go back. And the tabachim ne'emanim al gid anasheh, divrei Rabbi Meir. Okay, the tabachim are not trusted. They really remove gid anasheh, even if they say they do. V'chachamim u'blim ne'emanim ala v'ala chelev. They are believed, and also on chelev they're trusted. So you can trust the butchers. So now we're going to have to try to understand this machloket, and also at the end we're going to say, where did chelev come in? No one was talking about the chelev. They were only talking about the gid anasheh, Rabbi Meir, and then the rabbis add the chelev as well. So let's try to understand the rabbi's position. Amar Rabbi Chia Amar Abba, Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so Rabbi Chia Bar Abba says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Chazru lomar ne'emanim. What we have in the Mishnah is stage 2. The rabbis at first didn't trust them, and then they said, you know what, we do trust them. Why? So Amar Rav Nachman, Ichasher Dare, what? Is the later generation better that the rabbis changed their minds, said now the butchers are trusted? We always talk about Yiridat HaDorot, right? Everyone loves to say, oh yeah, when we were kids, we were much better behaved, right? Things always seem to be getting worse. So they say, no, Me'ikara, we'll explain it. Me'ikara originally, Tahavu Savra Leke Rabbi Meir, Lo Hava Mehemne. Originally, they held like Rabbi Meir in this debate we saw yesterday on Daf Tzadi Bet. We saw this debate about, if you remember, how far down do you have to go to get out the fats of the gid anasheh? And it seems to be not just the fats of the gid anasheh, but also the nerve itself. And Rava said you have to go all the way down. It's mamash in the middle of tzadi bet and bet. And Rav Yehuda said you just cut it off. Remember the words were gomimo imashofi. You just cut it off where it is. You don't have to start digging down and take out the roots. So now you're going to understand, because originally they held like Rabbi Meir, and then they weren't trusted to go all the way down and uproot it. That was a lot of hard work. But in the end, they were held like Rabbi Yehuda. It was pretty simple to do. So if a butcher says, I did it, we can trust them. But some people actually said that what Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said, and then Rabbi Yochanan was said on the end of the Mishnah, which is the chelev. And it reads like this. Chachamim omrim ne'emanim ala ve'ala chelev. Okay, so the rabbi said you're trusted on the gid anasheh, the tabachim, the butchers, the slaughterers, and on the chelev. So Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chazru lomar ein ne'emanim. This is the different version. What they said in the Mishnah is they're trusted, but later they said, you know what, we don't trust them anymore about the chelev. Not about gid anasheh. On that they were still trusted, but not on the chelev. So Amar Rav Nachman, Bisman hazeh ne'emanim. Rav Nachman bizman hazeh ne'emanim. And now instead of Rav Nachman questioning, Rav Nachman says, and nowadays all the butchers are trusted about the chelev. So now the Gemara asks, Ikashor Dare, what is the later generation of Rav Nachman's time more trusted? So they say, yeah, I will explain why. Again, it's not that they were trusted. It's just that things changed. Me'ikar savra Rabbi Yehuda. Now in this version, they started off with Rabbi Yehuda saying, all you have to do is just cut it off. Then what happened? Hadar savra Rabbi Meir. Then they changed and they said we hold like Rabbi Meir, and you have to go all the way down and take out all the fat. But there were some that still remember that they did it like Rabbi Yehuda. So some of those butchers wouldn't really take it out to get the fat all the way down. And then they didn't trust the butchers. So originally they trusted the butchers. Then they said, we don't trust the butchers because they're still holding like Rabbi Yehuda. They were still, right? Some of the butchers were still doing like Rabbi Yehuda because they remembered they used to. They said, what? Just because you changed the halacha, what we have to change? Right? They kind of seemed to remember, and they went with what they always did before. But now a lot of time has passed, and none of the butchers remember anymore that they used to do it like Rabbi Yehuda. The mainstream psak is Rabbi Meir. You have to go all the way down, and therefore we can trust the butchers now when they say they did it, because there's no reason to think that they're not doing it according to halacha. Now this explanation makes a lot more sense, because why wouldn't we trust butchers? We trust them with other things, right? Why are we all of a sudden not trusting them? The mistrust only happened because at some point they changed the halacha, the mainstream psak, and then they were worried that the butchers were still doing it the old way. But that over time doesn't happen anymore, and therefore they can go back to trusting them. So that's like an interesting explanation of the rabbi's position, and tells you about, halacha changing and how complicated things can get because of that. Okay, ve'ala chelev. So chelev mandikar shmei. Where did chelev come into the picture all of a sudden? Hachi kamar. This is the way to read it. Ein nemanim ala ve'ala chelev. Must be Rabbi Meir said we don't trust the butchers, not about the gid anasheh, and also not about the chelev. And chachamim omrim nemanim ala ve'ala chelev. And come the rabbis and they say no, we do trust him and about the chelev, right? Not only about gid anasheh, we trust him about the chelev as well. New Mishnah, and we'll just start here. today we'll just learn the new Mishnah. Sholech Adam Yarech Lenochri, Shegid Anasher B'tocha. You can send a thigh of an animal to a non-Jew, even though the Gid Anasher is there, Mipnei Shemekamoni Kar, because its location is clear. In other words, you see where it is, you see where the Gid is there, and it's obvious. So what's the issue? Well, you're giving it to a non-Jew. They can eat Gid Anasher, but the problem is they might sell it back to a Jew, and they'll say, oh, I bought it from a Jew. It must be kosher. So you can't do that. Well, you can do it when it's noticeable, because then the Jew will buy it and will see that the gid is intact. But what do you see here? Shlema im chatucha lo. If it's whole, yes, but not if it's cut up. Because if it's cut up, the Gemara says, sounds like you would be able to, because it wouldn't be recognizable. And now we're going to ask this question, but Mayaskina, what exactly is the case? And we'll leave that for tomorrow. Okay, so the first part we summarized. Now we're just going to talk about, we talked about the gid and the inner and the outer, and how they defined it seems to be opposite the way the Braita defined it. So how did Shmuel say that if the Braita says otherwise? We explained that. And then we had two sugyot about the tabach, about the butcher. Number one, if they sold chaylev, what do we do with this person? How are they penalized? And depends on how much. And what's this story about the tabachim believed, not believed, and what's the machloket, and really what's the rabbi's position? And something changed according to Rabbi Yochanan. It was just a little unclear what changed and what it changed to and when it changed. And with that, and then we start the next Mishnah, but that we'll start back with at the beginning of the next shiur. So with that, wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.